Imagine being alone on a distant desert world when a storm finally fades and you step outside, only to hear a sound no human was ever meant to hear. A cry in the night that leads to a wounded creature thought to be extinct, glowing with strange blue blood, its terrified eyes locking onto yours. In that moment, one choice will decide everything: survival, trust, or the beginning of an unbreakable bond between man, dog, and dragon. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The sandstorm on Orion 5 had raged for days without pause. The winds screamed across the barren desert, slamming against the dome of Jonas Calder's outpost. At 58, the retired navigator had grown used to the storms of this frontier world, but this one seemed endless, shaking the metal walls with every gust. Inside the small homestead, Jonas adjusted the atmospheric console and listened to the howl outside. His German shepherd, Asher, paced near the door, ears pricked, body tense. Storms never bothered Asher before. Tonight was different. The dog's growl was low, uneasy, and his eyes never left the reinforced airlock. Jonas muttered softly, "Easy, boy, just the wind." But even as he said it, he knew something else was wrong. The sound came then, sharp, piercing, and high-pitched. It was nothing like the roar of a storm or the bark of a dog. It was thinner, almost like a cry. The noise cut through the air, rattling Jonas's teeth and sending a shiver down his spine. Asher barked fiercely, lunging toward the door, as if to drive the unseen intruder away. Jonas froze, heart pounding. After 30 years of navigating deep space, after dozens of worlds and countless dangers, he trusted his instincts more than anything. And those instincts now whispered danger and discovery. The sound came again, closer this time, followed by a dull crash that shook the outpost's framework. Jonas felt it in the floor, a tremor that made him reach instinctively for the old pulse rifle mounted on the wall. He strapped on his environmental suit with steady hands, checking oxygen levels twice, an old habit drilled into him after decades of service. The air on Orion 5 could be breathed for a few minutes, but long exposure scarred the lungs. The world was still a century away from being truly habitable. He turned to Asher. "Stay here," Jonas ordered, though his voice lacked conviction. The shepherd whined and pressed closer, refusing to be left behind. Jonas sighed. "All right, but you wear your mask." He fitted the specially designed breathing unit over the dog's muzzle, securing the straps gently. Asher accepted it with the patience of long training. The airlock hissed and cycled open. Jonas and Asher stepped into the storm's aftermath. The wind had dropped to a whisper, carrying only fine dust that painted the twilight sky a deep amber. Above them, the twin suns sank behind the ridges, leaving long shadows over the dunes. Jonas switched on his helmet's thermal imaging. The screen flickered, and at once a bright flare appeared across the desert. A heat signature too small for machinery, too irregular for rock. It pulsed like something alive. "Come on, Asher," he said quietly. They moved across the sand, boots crunching in the silence left behind by the storm. Asher halted suddenly, muscles stiff, tail raised. A low rumble escaped his throat, more warning than threat. Jonas raised his rifle, careful to keep it on stun. Regulations were strict in the colonies. No lethal force unless absolutely necessary. When they reached the northern solar relay, Jonas saw the wreckage. Panels were twisted and shattered, their surfaces sparking weakly. Tangled within the broken metal was something that made him lower his weapon in shock. It was small. No larger than a farm cat, with wings folded awkwardly around its body. Its scales shimmered in the dying light, shifting from deep crimson to burnt orange, as though alive with fire. Thin trails of glowing blue blood marked the sand beneath it. The creature lifted its head weakly, and Jonas froze at the sight of its eyes. Bright, liquid blue, filled with fear, yet strikingly intelligent. Asher barked once, sharp and loud, then fell silent. Ears tilted forward in confusion rather than aggression. Jonas whispered, almost to himself, "That's a dragon." Of course, it could not truly be a dragon. Colonists had a habit of naming local creatures after myths and animals from Earth. But Jonas remembered the records. Dragons had been declared extinct years ago, casualties of terraforming that stripped their nesting grounds. Yet here one was, alive, broken, and clinging to survival in front of him. The creature released that strange high cry again, weaker now. Jonas saw the gash along its side, the torn wings oozing blue light. He stepped forward cautiously, rifle lowered. Asher moved with him, head low, eyes fixed on the wounded being. Jonas crouched, voice steady but gentle. "Easy, little one. I won't hurt you." The dragon blinked slowly, chest heaving with shallow breaths. The glow of its blood seemed fainter with each moment. Jonas's hands tightened on the rifle. Then he slung it over his shoulder. A decision pressed against him. Report it and risk the bureaucracy swallowing this fragile life. Or take a chance, here and now, alone with only a dog as witness. His instincts, the same instincts that had carried him through the dark between stars, made the choice for him. He reached into the wreckage, tools in hand, while Asher stood guard. It would take patience and care, but Jonas knew he could free the creature. Above them, the storm clouds drifted apart, revealing the first stars of night. And beneath their pale light, and Dragon began an encounter that would change all three forever. Jonas Calder carried the wounded creature through the airlock with slow, steady steps. The weight of the small dragon pressed heavy in his arms, no more than 30 pounds, but each movement felt delicate, as though he was holding something both fragile and irreplaceable. Asher followed closely, the German shepherd's mask still secured over his muzzle, eyes alert and watchful. Inside the homestead, the storm's echoes faded into silence. Jonas laid the creature gently on a padded bench near his work table. The dragon whimpered softly, wings folded tight against its body, glowing blood pooling beneath its scales. The strange luminescence painted the metal floor in shades of blue, an eerie reminder that this being was something alien and rare. Asher sniffed the air, nose twitching, but kept his distance. His body language was calm, yet cautious. Jonas could see the struggle within the dog, curiosity pulling him forward, instinct warning him back. Jonas removed his helmet and let out a slow breath. "You shouldn't even exist," he murmured. "And yet, here you are." He reached for his medical kit, fingers moving with the old confidence of a man used to patching wounds in the field. Years of frontier life demanded basic training, and his time in the service had given him more than enough practice treating injuries. But this was different. This was no human. No known species catalogued by colony surveys. Still, blood was blood, and pain was pain. Jonas cleaned the wound carefully, using sterile gauze and a broad-spectrum antiseptic designed for multi-planet use. The dragon flinched, a soft hiss escaping its throat, but it did not resist. Instead, its bright eyes locked on Jonas, wide and searching, as though trying to understand his intent. "Easy now," Jonas whispered, keeping his voice steady and calm. "I'm trying to help." Asher crept closer, lowering his head until his nose nearly touched the edge of the bench. The dragon gave a faint, questioning trill. Jonas held his breath, watching the exchange. The shepherd did not growl, did not bark. Instead, he sat down beside the bench, tail thumping once against the floor. Jonas felt a flicker of relief. If Asher accepted the creature, even with caution, then maybe there was hope for this fragile alliance. As he wrapped the wound with clean bandages, Jonas noticed details he had missed outside. The dragon's scales shifted in color, faint patterns rippling like water across its body. Small horns jutted from its snout, delicate yet sharp. The rise and fall of its chest was steady, almost mammalian, warm against his hands. "You're tougher than you look," Jonas said softly. The dragon blinked slowly, its breathing easing. Asher tilted his head, watching with silent curiosity, as though sensing the fragile trust forming in the room. For a moment, Jonas considered calling the colony's science division. Protocol demanded it. Any discovery of lost or unknown species had to be reported immediately. Yet he hesitated. He pictured the cold clinical labs of Orion 5's main settlement, the endless tests, the creature treated not as a life, but as a specimen. He shook his head. "No," he whispered, "you won't survive that." Jonas finished his work, placing a blanket over the dragon's trembling body. He adjusted the temperature controls in the room, raising the heat slightly to ease the creature's shivers. The dragon's eyes closed briefly, then opened again, fixing on Jonas with a gaze that felt almost human. Outside, the winds rattled weakly against the dome, but another sound carried through the night, faint, distant, and rhythmic, like something moving across the dunes. Jonas paused, his hand tightening on the edge of the table. He glanced toward Asher, who had already risen, ears forward, tail rigid. The shepherd's low growl filled the room, not of curiosity this time, but of warning. Jonas switched off the overhead light and moved toward the viewing slit on the reinforced wall. The desert stretched into shadow, twin moons casting silver light across the ridges. For a moment, nothing stirred. Then, far to the north, he caught sight of shapes moving, dark figures against the sand, too many to be wildlife, too deliberate to be coincidence. His heart sank. Scavengers. They roamed the outer settlements, picking apart crashed equipment, sometimes even raiding isolated homesteads. If they had seen the same heat signature he had, they might already be coming. Jonas stepped back, considering his options. His pulse rifle leaned against the wall, but weapons alone would not guarantee safety. He turned back to the bench. The dragon watched him, blue eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Its small chest rose and fell with effort, but its gaze did not waver. Asher stood between Jonas and the creature, ready to defend both. Jonas spoke quietly, almost to himself. "We're in this together now." He tightened the shutters, locked the doors, and reset the power systems to silent mode. Every instinct in him said danger was closing in, but another feeling pressed stronger: responsibility. He had chosen not to hand the creature over, and now it was his to protect. The dragon gave a soft chirp, a sound that carried neither fear nor pain, but something else: trust. Jonas sat back, rifle within reach, Asher at his side, the dragon resting under the blanket. The desert night stretched around them, heavy with silence and uncertainty. Yet in that quiet, Jonas felt something he had not felt in years: a purpose. And though danger loomed beyond the dunes, inside the outpost, a fragile bond had begun to grow between man, dog, and dragon. The morning on Orion 5 broke with a pale golden light, the twin suns climbing slowly over the ridge of sand. Jonas Calder stood outside his outpost, his environmental suit sealed tight, scanning the horizon. The night had been restless, filled with the distant echoes of movement across the dunes. Though no intruders had reached the homestead, he knew scavengers were out there. Their tracks near the northern ridge told the story well enough. Inside, the dragon rested beneath a thermal blanket. Its wounds were healing faster than Jonas expected, the bandages faintly glowing where the blood had soaked through. Asher, the German shepherd, refused to leave its side, standing guard as though he had sworn an oath. Jonas adjusted his helmet and turned back toward the outpost. "We'll need to move," he said quietly once inside. "The relay's down, and without power, we're a beacon for trouble." Asher wagged his tail once, a gesture of readiness. The dragon lifted its head, eyes bright though its body still weak. Jonas felt the weight of responsibility press harder on his shoulders. This was no longer about survival alone. It was about protection. He prepared a sled, small and sturdy, designed for hauling supplies across the desert. With careful hands, he placed the dragon on it, securing the blanket around its fragile body. Asher trotted beside him, tail high, ears forward, ready for whatever lay beyond the dunes. They set out across the sand, the sled dragging smoothly behind. The desert stretched wide and endless, an ocean of rust-colored dunes beneath a burning sky. Each step carried them farther from the safety of the homestead and deeper into unknown risks. The dragon watched the horizon, its blue eyes alert, its small wings twitching occasionally under the blanket. Jonas glanced at it often, surprised by how aware it seemed. There was intelligence there, something beyond instinct, something that mirrored curiosity. As they traveled, Jonas remembered the decades he had spent navigating stars, guiding fleets across uncharted systems. He had been many things: soldier, explorer, leader. But never had he felt a duty as personal as this. They reached the broken solar relay by midday. Jonas crouched beside the twisted panels, tools in hand. The storm had ripped cables from their mounts, sand buried half the structure, and faint sparks flickered from damaged joints. It would take hours of work to restore. Asher circled the area, sniffing, ears pricked. The shepherd stopped suddenly, staring into the distance. Jonas followed his gaze but saw only dunes rippling in the heat. Still, he trusted the dog's instincts. Danger was never far in the frontier. While Jonas worked, the dragon shifted restlessly on the sled. It chirped softly, a sound like a question. Jonas looked up, sweat trickling under his helmet. "Easy now," he murmured. "Almost done." The dragon tilted its head, watching his movements. Then, to Jonas's surprise, it mimicked a small sound, clicks and hums that matched the rhythm of his tools. Jonas froze, then smiled faintly. "So, you're paying attention, are you?" Asher returned to his side, sitting firmly between the sled and the open desert. The shepherd's protective stance never wavered. Jonas reached down and gave his companion a brief pat. Hours passed as Jonas repaired the relay. Cables reattached, panels realigned, circuits fused back together. Finally, the system hummed to life, sending power flowing back toward the outpost. He leaned back with relief, though exhaustion tugged at his muscles. The dragon stirred, wings twitching. Faint veins of light spread across the delicate membranes, glowing softly under the suns. Jonas stared in awe. It was the first true sign of recovery, a signal that the creature's strength was returning. Asher barked once, sharp and sudden. Jonas turned quickly. Far on the horizon, dark shapes moved. Too small for storms. Too steady for animals. Scavengers. We need to go, Jonas said firmly. He packed his tools, secured the sled, and began pulling across the sand once more. Asher trotted ahead, every sense alert, guiding them through safer paths. The sun dipped low as they pressed on, painting the dunes with long shadows. Jonas knew they could not make it back to the homestead before nightfall. He searched for shelter, finally spotting a hollow in the ridge where rocks broke the endless sands. They settled there as darkness crept over Orion 5. Jonas built a small thermal lamp, its glow casting soft light in the hollow. Asher lay near the entrance, eyes fixed outward, while Jonas checked the dragon's wounds. To his relief, the healing was remarkable. The gash along its side had closed, the torn wings knitting with faint lines of shimmering light. He touched the scales gently, and the creature looked at him with eyes that glowed like blue fire. "You're stronger than I thought," Jonas whispered. The dragon stretched its wings slowly, carefully, the membranes casting patterns of light against the rock. Jonas and Asher both froze, watching the display. It was beautiful and strange, like a living lantern in the desert night. Then, beyond the hollow, movement stirred. Jonas's heart raced as shadows shifted along the dunes. Scavengers were closer now, their presence undeniable. He reached for his rifle, his body tense, while Asher growled low and steady. The dragon tucked its wings tight, but its eyes stayed open, glowing fiercely in the dark. Jonas whispered to himself, "We're not alone anymore." The desert night pressed heavy around them, filled with silence and waiting. Man, dog, and dragon huddled together in the hollow, guardians against the dangers that crept closer with every passing hour. And though fear whispered at the edges, something else burned brighter: loyalty, courage, and the beginning of trust, strong enough to stand against the desert itself. The night on Orion 5 stretched long and tense. Jonas Calder sat in the hollow with his back against the stone, rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the shifting dunes beyond. The faint glow from the dragon's wings flickered across the sand, casting rippling shadows that seemed alive. Asher, loyal as ever, lay at the edge of the hollow, growling softly at every sound carried by the desert wind. The scavengers were close. Jonas could feel it as surely as he felt the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. Their movements were cautious, deliberate, the kind of patience born from long practice. He knew they would wait for the right moment, testing his defenses, circling like predators. The dragon stirred on the sled, lifting its head weakly. Its blue eyes glowed in the dark, steady and watchful. Jonas leaned closer, whispering, "You'll be safe, little one. I promise." But promises were easy to make in the silence of night. Keeping them was another matter. Hours passed, broken only by the soft crackle of the thermal lamp and the faint cries of desert birds in the distance. Jonas's muscles ached from stillness, his mind sharpened by anticipation. Then it came, the sound of footsteps, muffled but unmistakable, moving closer. Shot to his feet, barking fiercely, body rigid with focus. Jonas raised his rifle, heart pounding. Shadows slipped along the ridge, figures emerging one by one. The scavengers had arrived. Their leader stepped forward, his face hidden beneath a mask of sandcloth, his voice carrying low across the hollow. "Hand it over, old man. That creature's worth more than your life." Jonas tightened his grip on the rifle. "You'll have to kill me first." A tense silence followed, broken only by the desert wind. Then laughter, cold and sharp. The scavengers began to advance. Asher lunged forward, teeth bared, forcing the raiders to hesitate. Jonas fired a warning shot, the pulse beam striking the sand in front of them with a burst of light. The scavengers froze, but only for a moment. They were determined, and Jonas knew he could not hold them off forever. Then the dragon moved. It rose shakily to its feet, wings unfolding wide for the first time. Veins of blue light pulsed across the thin membranes, glowing brighter with each breath. The scavengers stopped, staring in disbelief. A deep, resonant sound filled the hollow, a mixture of cry and hum, vibrating through the sand itself. The dragon's small body seemed to shimmer with energy, and then, in a sudden burst, it released a wave of light. Brilliant blue radiance washed across the desert, dazzling and blinding, filling the night with a spectacle no human eyes had ever witnessed. The scavengers stumbled back, shielding their faces, blinded by the brilliance. Their weapons dropped, their courage faltering. The dragon's cry grew louder, echoing against the dunes, until the raiders turned and fled into the darkness, vanishing like shadows swept away by dawn. Silence returned. Jonas lowered his rifle slowly, chest rising and falling with relief. Asher trotted back to his side, tail wagging cautiously, eyes still sharp and alert. The dragon folded its wings again, collapsing back onto the sled, exhausted but alive. Jonas knelt beside it, his voice low. "You saved us. After all that pain, you still had strength left." The dragon blinked, its eyes softening, and for the first time Jonas felt something pass between them, not fear, not caution, but understanding. As the first rays of dawn spread across the desert, Jonas looked out at the endless horizon. The colony would never understand what he had found here, not truly. To them, this creature would be nothing more than data, a specimen to be tested, studied, perhaps destroyed. But to Jonas, it was more. It was hope, proof that life could endure even after the harshest storms. And that trust could be born between the most unlikely companions. He thought of his years spent wandering the stars, the loneliness that had followed him into retirement, the silence that had filled his home. Now, with Asher at his side and the dragon watching him with glowing eyes, that silence was gone. Jonas made his choice then. He would not report the dragon to the colony. Some wonders were not meant to be cataloged or caged. Some were meant to be protected, to live freely, untouched by human hands. He rose to his feet, pulling the sled gently across the sand. Asher walked beside him, loyal as ever, while the dragon rested under the blanket, its faint glow casting light across their path. Together, they moved toward the rising suns. The desert stretched before them, vast and unending, yet no longer empty. Man, dog, and dragon walked as one, bound not by duty or survival alone, but by trust, courage, and something far greater. As the dawn broke fully, Jonas whispered to himself, "This is what life is meant to be." And with each step across the glowing sands, the bond they had forged grew stronger, carrying them into a future where loyalty and friendship meant more than fear or greed. For in saving the dragon, Jonas had discovered something far greater, the meaning of his own life.